Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most kind, the most merciful. Inshallah, we start. Ask for peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So, our last session covered some aspects of cleanliness. So, although this session's about the prayer, there are obviously things that have to be done before a person can pray. So, last time we went through some of those. So that was obviously on a previous video. So now we'll continue on. So today what I wanted to talk about is something called Ghusl, which is when a person has to have a full bath. So what does this mean? Well, I'll explain it as we go on. So there are certain situations that make the requirement of having a bath compulsory. So a person gets into a state which is known as janaba, which is a state of impurity. And in this situation, a person isn't allowed to pray. They're not even allowed to enter into the hall of a mosque. They can't touch the Quran until they are, and even to recite the Quran, they're not even allowed to recite the Quran in general in those conditions until they come back into that situation where they're now clean again, they've had this bath. So inshallah we'll cover how this bath is taken. It's not that complicated, and kind of some of the rules and regulations run about this. So this is known as ghusl. So whenever you hear this word used, ghusl, that's all it means, is about having a bath to make yourself pure again. As I mentioned in the last session, that there are some impurities which are visible and have to be washed off, like blood and urine and things like that. But so by seeing them, you can see that they're filth. But there's other types of washing which isn't apparent, you can't see it. It's just because of an Islamic ruling that we have to do it. And this is one of those ones where there's an Islamic ruling that requires us to have a complete bath in order to become clean again. So there are four compulsory components of having this, there are three compulsory parts of having this bath. They're very easy to remember. You need to rinse out your mouth with water. You need to rinse out your nose with water. And then you have to pass water over your entire body. So it's not that difficult. So a person's having a shower, and in the shower, they put water in their mouth. They might even gargle it. They put water up their nostrils and they clean their nose out. And they're in the shower and they've washed their entire body. Every single part of it is wet. So as a result of doing that, the person is now purified again, and now they can pray and they can go into the mosque and they can do everything else. So it's not that complicated. So these are the compulsory components of it. There's a sunnah way of doing it, the way the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to do it. And inshallah we'll get to that. But those are the three compulsory parts: washing the mouth, washing the nostrils, passing water over the entire body. So when a person's having a bath, there are some things that we've got to take into consideration. The bath should be in a place which is totally private. If a person's obviously going to have to remove all of their clothes, let's say a person's having a bath in a stream or in a river or in the sea or something like that, and then in that case, as long as a person's wearing, like for a man, it would be like long shorts that are that pass below his knees and cover up until and including his belly button, then that would be fine. A person could have a bath in the open, and that would be all right, because the private part would be covered, which is from below the knee till above the belly button. For a woman, it would be different, because for a woman, all of her body has to be covered except her face, her hands, and her feet when she's out in public. So therefore, in her case, if she was having a bathing in some place like this outside, then she would have to ensure that all the parts of the body were still covered, because it's a public place. But that's just something to bear in mind. Like I mentioned with regarding in my last session about going to the toilet, when you go to the toilet, you've got to ensure that your back's not facing towards the direction of prayer. Neither are you facing the front of you facing towards the direction of prayer. Similar is the case when a person's having a bath. If they're totally naked, then they have to ensure that they're not facing towards the direction of prayer. Neither is their back towards it either. If a person's having a bath, they can be standing, they can be seated, it doesn't matter. Preferably would be to be seated, but it's not such a big issue. When having the bath, it's important to make sure that a person uses enough water. We don't want to waste water, but at the same time, we need to make sure that the entire body is wet. Otherwise, if even a small part of it is left dry, the ghusl won't be complete and a person will still be in an impure state, which means that they can't pray, they can't go into the mosque, etc. While having a bath, it's preferred that a person doesn't speak. Obviously, if there's some necessity, that's fine, but generally, that's something that we don't do. And while having a bath, it's better not to read anything Islamic while we're having a bath at that time either. So a person can make the intention as well while they're having the bath. They can make the intention that I'm performing this ghusl, I'm performing this bath so that I become purified again. If a person doesn't make the intention, it's not a problem. Intention again is just in the mind. Even if the person just, by chance ended up washing themselves totally with no intention of purifying themselves from this major impurity, it would still be valid. But if you want to get reward, then it's good to have the intention that you're doing this because it's an Islamic practice as well. So let's say, for example, a person was in an impure state and fell into a swimming pool. So as a result, water went in the mouth, in the nose, all over the body. They had no intention of having a bath, but they ended up in the water. As a result, the person no longer has to have a bath. But will they get reward for performing the bath? No, because it was accidental. So if the person had intended, let's say they were at a swimming pool and they intended that I'm going to go into the swimming pool with the intention of purifying myself, then they would also get a reward for having done that. So I mentioned that there are 3 compulsory parts of having the bath, which is rinsing out the mouth, rinsing out the nostrils, and washing the entire body, making sure that not even a small part is left that hasn't been washed. There's also a sunnah way, the way that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to do it. If we can do it that way, then it will get us more reward. But if we just do the bare minimum, it will still be fine as well. But this obviously brings us most reward. So how would a person do this? So what a person would do is, first of all, wash both the hands, including the wrists. Then a person would wash the private parts. The hands and the private parts should be washed, even if one's not in an impure state. So even if a person's just taking a regular bath, for example, on a Friday, it's a good practice to take a bath before Jummah prayer. So in that case, a person might not be in a state of impurity, but even then we try and follow these. So first of all would be wash your hands and also wash the private parts. And after that, obviously, you would wash your hands again. If there is any impurity on the body, then that must be washed off at this point as well. Then what a person will do is they'll perform their wudu. So as I put on the last video, how to perform the wudu, just the way you would do for prayer, you would perform your wudu. So you would wash your hands 3 times, you would rinse your mouth out 3 times, you would rinse your nose out 3 times, you would wash your face 3 times, you'll wash your right arm 3 times, then you'll wash your left arm 3 times, you'll pass wet hands over your head once, and you'll wash both of your feet 3 times, starting with the right and then the left. That's wudu. So you'll perform your wudu now at this point. Let's say, for example, where you're having a bath, the water doesn't run away. So there's like a puddle of water. So obviously that water's dirty. So what you don't want to do then is wash your feet at that point. You can delay washing your feet till the end. So you can do the rest of your wudu and wait to wash your feet at the end. But if the water's flowing away as it does in our baths and showers, then there's no problem washing your feet at that point too. After you've performed your wudu, what you want to do is take water and you want to put water over your head 3 times. Then you want to take water and put it over your shoulder 3 times. And then you want to take water you want to take water first of all and put it over your head 3 times. You want to do that process. Then you want to take water and put it over your right shoulder 3 times. And then you want to take water and put it over your left shoulder 3 times. Then what you want to do is you want to pour water over your entire body and you want to rub each part of the body just to make sure that it is completely wet and nothing's been missed out. Now, if a person has plaited hair, so the hair is tied up quite tightly, then it's compulsory to ensure that all of the hair has been wet for a man. So for a man, they need to make sure that every single part, the roots of the hair which connect to the scalp, and all the strands of hair have to be washed. If it's a woman, then there's different ruling for them, but for men, they must do that. So if the water's not reaching every part of the hair without undoing the plaits, then they must undo them and then wash all of it. But in the case of a woman, what she would do instead is that she will just make sure that it gets to the roots of the hair, and that would be what's compulsory for her. So if the hair of the head is not plaited, it's compulsory to wet all the hair up to the very base. If a single hair is left dry, the bath will not be valid. If the hair of a woman's head is plaited, she's excused from loosening her plaits, but it is compulsory for her to wet the base of each and every hair. If she fails to do so, then the bath will not be valid. As for men who grow long hair and plait them, they are not excused from leaving their hair dry. If a woman experiences difficulty or is unable to wet the very bottom of her plaited hair, then it's necessary for her to undo the hair as well and to wash the entire hair. Okay. It's preferable to make sure that as we're washing the body that we rub all parts of it as well with the hands to ensure that the water's reached every part of the body and no portion has been left dry. So if a person has rings on or earrings, things like that, then what should happen is you should remove them before washing that part of the body, because if that part's left dry, then the bath will not have taken place. And also particular attention should be paid to like the kind of the smaller difficult areas to get to. So for example, a person's belly button, the inside of their ears, these type of places that might get left, underneath the armpit, stuff like that. Make sure that the water gets there so that every part is wet. On completion, when a person's now done this, they've performed the bath, what you'll then do is, if the place is clean where you're standing, that's fine. You can get a towel, dry yourself off. If not, you can move away to somewhere that's clean, wash your feet because the place where you were wasn't clean, and then you will dry off your body. But obviously, if you washed your feet already during the bath and the place was clean, then you don't have to wash your feet again. It was only if you missed it out at that point or the place ended up with dirty water in it, so you're now washing your feet at the end. Let's say, for example, a person has had their bath and later on throughout the day they remember that they missed something out. So for example, a person maybe forgot to do the feet but didn't remember until later on. So you wouldn't perform the whole bath again, you would just wash the feet, just that part of the body. Or let's say someone forgot to rinse out their mouth and their nose and they remembered later on, so you just rinse out your mouth and nose. You don't have to have a complete bath again. And in that way, inshallah, you'll now be able to go and perform your prayer and stuff. But like I mentioned earlier, this is the sunnah way, this is the more rewarding way. But let's say you're in a rush or you've not got time and you just do the three things, which is rinse your mouth out, rinse your nose, and wash your entire body and make sure it's all wet. As long as you do those three things, you're absolutely fine. You can now go and touch the Quran, recite the Quran, go into the mosque, etc. So some rulings run about having this compulsory bath. Let's say, for example, you're not well and there are a certain part of the body that can't be washed. So let's say, for example, a person's got an injury on their head, and by washing that part of the head, it would make the injury worse, or the person could even die, or it would stop it from healing. It would, then in that case, you would not wash that part of the body. So it's permissible to leave the head dry and wash the rest of the body if it's harmful to apply water to the head due to some sickness or ailment. However, once the person is cured of the sickness, it is compulsory to wash the head. Water has to flow over it. Obviously, when the situation passes and the person's now healthy again, then obviously you have to wash that part of the body because the reason for not doing it has now gone. Once a person's had their bath, a person should get their clothes on as soon as possible. Obviously, it's against modesty to just for no reason to be going around without clothes. Islam obviously emphasizes modesty, so it's important to do this. It's not necessary to remove any medicine from the body either. So say a person has got some cream on somewhere, maybe there's a skin problem or a cut or something or a wound, then you wouldn't have to make sure that you remove all the cream and then wash that part of the body. All you would do is pour water over that part of the body if it was okay to do, on top of the cream, on top of whatever was there. And that would be sufficient. You wouldn't have to make sure that it's all been completely removed. So let's say a person's now had their entire bath. You don't have to go and do wudu now separately in order to do your prayer and stuff like that, because the compulsory parts of wudu have already been covered when having a bath. So therefore, like your face, your arms, your head and your feet were already washed. So therefore, you've already got wudu. You can just go straight ahead now and do your acts of worship. It's not a problem. So that kind of covers most of the points regarding having a compulsory bath. So hygiene obviously is very important in Islam. So there are some other aspects of hygiene which are important. So in Islam, I'd mentioned this in the previous one, keeping the nails short is an Islamic practice. Obviously not too short that you hurt yourself, but once a week, for example, cutting the nails back of the feet and the hands, or every 2 weeks. So whatever is normal for a person, that should be done. A person shouldn't be leaving their nails long, men or women. And with regards to other things that they should do is the removing of hair from underneath the armpits and from the private parts. So this is compulsory actually, that it has to be done. The maximum time that a person can go without removing the hair under their armpits or on and round about their private parts is 40 days. So it must be removed, no longer than 40 days, otherwise a person will be sinful. Usually it would be done once a week. People tend to wait for like a Friday before Jummah and all that, before they have their bath, they'll remove all the hair, have a bath, and then that's them. They've clipped their nails and all that on that day as well. But maximum is no more than 40 days. So if a person's removing the hair from the private parts, to what extent do they have to remove it? So obviously under the armpits, all the hair, you just remove that. The method for removing it is supposed to be that a person plucks the hair, but obviously that's not something that we tend to do. So if a person used something like, for example, wax or something to remove the hair, that would also kind of fall under like plucking it. But if a person uses a razor as well or something, or hair removal cream, that's fine too. When it comes to around about the private parts, then a person would tend to use a razor to remove all those hairs, and it would just be the hair that is pubic hair. So as long as the pubic hair on the private part and the pubic hair around about it is removed, then that would be fine. A person's now okay. So that's generally what a person has to do. There are times where a person has to have this compulsory bath. A couple of rulings that I forgot. So one would be like after sexual intercourse. So a person has to have a bath. Also, a person has to have a bath if any sperm or anything comes out of the body. Then a person has to have a bath. For women, after they've had their monthly period, then they must have a bath. And also women that have postnatal bleeding. So they've given birth and then there's blood that's been coming out. When that blood stops, then they must have a bath as well. So for a woman, a period can't be any longer than 10 days. Anything longer than that is known as istihada, which is like an illness. And then the person still has to have a bath to start off in the prayers and that again, even when the bleeding's not stopped. And with nifas, with the postnatal bleeding, if it continues beyond 40 days, then the person will, after 40 days, have a bath and start praying and stuff like that. And that blood will just be counted as part of an illness, not part of the postnatal bleeding. So yeah, so if we do these things, then inshallah, we can, we can be then in a state of being able to get ready to do our prayer. So I'd mentioned that there is a dry ablution that can be done. So there is a certain situation where there might not be water, and a person can't use water for a medical reason. Then what would a person do? So in that situation, there's a type of wudu or a type of bathing called Tayumum, which is a dry form of ablution or a dry form of having a bath. So what are the circumstances where that's allowed? So let's say that a person knows that within 1 mile radius there is no water. Yeah, so they're out maybe in the forest or they're in a desert or wherever they're traveling and there's no water for a mile roundabout. So in that case, a person doesn't have to put themselves at extra hardship and travel that extra mile. They will just perform dry ablution and then they will offer their prayers instead. Let's say there's a fear that, yes, there is water nearby, but there's a danger. Maybe there's some enemies over there, or there's like an animal that can be dangerous. And as a result, a person thinks, I'm not going to go there, even though there is water. That's fine as well. That's not a problem. Let's say the water's so little that a person's got some water, but if they use up that water, then there's not going to be any water to drink. And then there could be a problem of having thirst. So then in that case, you would keep the water for drinking rather than for performing the ablution. And in that case, you would do the dry ablution. Let's say there's a well, but there's no way of getting the water out the well because there's no bucket, there's no rope. You wouldn't obviously jump into a well and start endangering yourself. So in that case, you would be able to perform your dry ablution, your tayammum. Let's say a person knows that through experience that they're not well at the moment, they might have a fever or something, and they go, do you know what, if I use water, it's going to make me more unwell, or it's going to stop me from getting better, or the doctors told them that. Then in that case, you wouldn't need to use the water, you could do the dry ablution as well. Let's say there is water, but it's being sold, and you have to pay for it, and you don't have enough money to pay for the water. Then in that case, you would be fine to, what's it called, do the dry ablution. Or let's say that it's at such a price that it's far too expensive. Then in that situation as well, you wouldn't have to perform. You would be able to do your what's it called, dry ablution in that case. Let's say you're at a place and there's no water, and you just take a guess and think that there's not going to be water within a mile, and there's no one else to tell you otherwise. That's fine. But if someone says to you, no, there is water nearby in less than a mile, then you have to go there, get the water, and perform your wudu. So if there is no traces of water anywhere, there's no one present that gives you the information there is water, you believe that the water will be further away than a mile, then you can perform dry ablution. If there's so little water available that a person has some water, but they can only carry out the compulsory parts of wudu, then that's fine, then you would use the water for that. You wouldn't be allowed to do the dry ablution then. Let's say, for example, that let's say, for example, there's very little water, but you've got enough that you could use, but your clothes are also impure, or your body's impure, a certain part of it. So what you would do is you would clean the body and the clothes first, and if you had any more water, you would perform the ablution or the bath. If you didn't, then you would perform tayammum in that situation. Okay. There are three parts of the dry ablution, the tayammum. So one is that you have to make the intention. So in your mind, you must know why you're performing it. Are you performing it for wudu, or are you performing it for a bath? Whatever the intention is, you should know that in your mind. So for example, in your mind, you should be thinking, I'm making my tayammum for a bath, or I'm making my tayammum for wudu. Tayammum is just dry ablution. So you make the intention, so that's compulsory. The second thing is that you will then use clean earth or dust in order to do your tayammum. So how is it done? You will put your hands, you'll strike them on that surface, and then you'll wipe your hands. You will blow off any excess of dust or anything that's on your hands, and you will then wipe them over your entire face, making sure that you reach every single part of your face. And you'll only do this once for your face. Then you'll place your hands again on the surface. You'll dust them off, blow your hands so that you get any particles off. And then you will, with your hands, you will pass them over your right arm and then pass them over your left arm, including and above your elbows and in between your fingers and all that. And that will be you done. So you only do that once. So once you touch the ground and you do it for your face, once you touch the ground and you do it for both of your arms, and that's you're done. So there's no washing of the feet, the head, any other part of the body. And that's the same for wudu, and it's the same for if you have to have a bath. Yeah, and Tayumum can be done, as I mentioned, for wudu and for ghusl. So what items can you use that you put your hand on? So I mentioned earth and I mentioned dust. So earth that is clean, so there's no impurity that's on it or that's been absorbed into it that you know of. So like, for example, you're out in the open and you see some earth just lying there, some soil, and to you it just looks like normal soil. That's fine. You can put your hands on that and you can use that. That's not a problem. Sand's also okay. You can use sand. A stone, so you can put your hands on a stone. Limestone. Let's say there's a pot that's been made out of what's it called? It's like a baked earthen pot made out of clay or something, but it's not got a glaze on it. There's no shine on it. It's just the actual pot. So because that's also kind of earth, you can use that. Say there's a wall that's been made of mud, stone, or brick. That's fine. You can use that. Clay can be used as well. All items which have thick dust on them. So anywhere that you can find dust, even a shelf with like lots of dust on it, you can use that dust for that purpose. Items that you're not allowed to use for tayammum, that you couldn't use wood, metal, glass, any food items, or things that can burn, melt, or rot. Those things you're not allowed to use for tayammum. So the things that I'd mentioned in this list, they don't have to have dust on them. So for example, earth, sand, stone, limestone, baked pots, walls of mud, stone, brick, clay. They don't have to have dust on them. You can just use them themselves, put your hand on it, and that's fine. Obviously, the last one was dust itself. So if dust is on anything in particular, then that's fine. You can use that dust in order to perform tayammum. There are another two situations where you can perform tayammum, even when there is water. So, for example, let's say that you're about to do the funeral prayer of someone and it's already started. So there's not enough, or it's about to start. There's not enough time to do wudu and then join the prayer because you'll miss the prayer because it's done within about a minute or two. And that can't be repeated after the funeral prayer has been done. There's no way of making it up. So in that case, you could quickly do tayammum and offer the prayer. Or let's say it was the Eid prayer again, because you can't offer the Eid prayer after it. So you were about to miss the Eid prayer, you could do that, and that would be fine. Let's say you've done tayammum and you've done your wudu or your ghusl, and you've now offered your prayer, and then you find water. You don't have to repeat the prayer again. It's already done, so it's accepted. That's not a problem. And the tayammum, the wudu from that, will last as long as it normally does. Or until a person finds water. So all the things that break wudu would also break the tayammum and would mean that you would have to repeat it again in that way. Let's say you were doing tayammum because the dry ablution because you had an illness and now the illness is gone. Then again, the reason for you doing that has now gone. So as a result, you will now have to start performing your wudu and having baths again. And I think we'll leave it at that. So that's us for today. Let me just stop this quickly. There we go.